Hey everybody, and welcome back to the stream. So we're going to continue today working on the torso for the Centaur figure, and we're pretty much going to restart at this point. I really thought hard at what kind of feel I really wanted to get to these skin tones, and originally the idea was to try to match it and create some sort of interesting gradient between the horse flesh and the human flesh. And we did a lot of muddying up towards the end of the last video with the airbrush, and lots of that hand painting was wasted. So now we're going to go back and I'm going to dial in the natural pink, purple flesh tones and really give it, to me, I feel like a little bit more life. So what I'm first doing now is we're adding in some white onto the palette because I'm going to start mixing in some white. We're going to start going with some lighter layers. We're using primarily pink flesh from Scale Color. I'm going to mix that a little bit with a little bit of light skin, a little bit of pale flesh, but mostly we're going to be working with that palette and then adding in some blue tones. I'm going to be using navy blue from Scale 75 Color. And with that, and what else am I using? I think probably a little bit of Indian Shadow as well is going to hit the palette, which is a kind of reddish purple color. We're going to start going over the whole thing, and let me walk you through just a little bit of this as we get going. Please let me know if the speed of the recording's too fast. I record these at an hour to 2 hours per session, and then I have to condense that down into as small as possible so that you guys can watch and still get as much information without it being, you know, 5 videos or something like that. So an hour of video at 300% speed, which is what this is, boils down to about 20 minutes, which I feel like is a good journaling type speed. So please let me know if that's the case. I also moved the camera, and you're going to see me a lot in this. I apologize for that. That is not my intention. So we're still messing around with exactly what the proper camera placement is, and I'm hoping to maybe be able to get a micro high quality camera. You can't really use GoPros and get really good quality, so as far as high quality cameras go, it's a little bit more expensive. So we're trying to figure out I'm trying to figure out some interesting stuff to be able to get a better, smaller camera that I can put in front of my body versus around my head somewhere. But anyway, so we're going to start by glazing over the top of our cool tones with a very, very light pinkish color. And you can see that already we're getting a nice contrast between the actual skin of the torso and head and the horse flesh, and this is going to turn out really, really well. I'm going to play some music for a lot of this, so we're not going to do a tremendous amount of just walkthrough. I will try to chime in whenever it's important. What I'm doing here is we're adding in purple to the shadow areas. So with the basic color theory work, we've got our warm tones, which were the base color. We're adding in some pinkish tones and some flesh tones, which are going to be in between pink and that super warm kind of brownish tannish. To offset that, you add in more real true pinkish colors, and in the shadows you add more blue to it, which is going to give you those purple tones. So we're going to go back and forth between that a lot, and it's really going to give some extensive life to the model, as you can see already starting to appear here. It's very, very cool. So let's get some music cranking and see what we get. dry off the figure. We made a big error by using a lot of wet paint over the course of the last, in real time, probably 15 minutes, but in fake time, maybe 5 minutes. And you can see that I worn off right above the skull at the bottom of his torso. It's gone back to brown. So we're going to have to go back and fix that. This is because I've been doing wet on wet on wet on wet, and any layers that I had dry this particular session did not have enough time to completely dry, and just kind of messed it up. So we're going back in now with some warmer pinks. So on top of the whitish tones that we've been working with a lot, now we're going to glaze a little bit in the pink tones. And this gives a lot more, I don't know, I mean, I've said life a lot, but it is life. You know, the red tones and the purple tones are what give it life. That's the blood coursing through underneath. So you can see that was a really, really easy fix. Just layered in the pink and then put the whites back on. Now we're just continuing to smooth everything off. Those darker tones are working really well. If you can see through my head, which is totally in the way, I am so sorry about that. Working with lots of purple here, getting that undershadow. If the direction of the light is coming across that belt, you're going to have a shadow right underneath the belt. I keep on adding little bits and pieces to the face, but I think the face is going to be its own really small tutorial. I don't think it's going to take a lot of time, but it's going to be a lot more pink than we're going to end up with. I'm going to do that one on its own. So that and that hand, I really didn't pay a whole lot of attention to. There's my microphone sticking out. And I think I'm just going to stop. I talk during these, but it gets kind of annoying just because I'm kind of rambling while I'm working. So I think the voiceover is going to end up being better in the long run. I just have to get used to being able to do it, and sitting down and actually watching my entire video from start to finish in real time, and talking about it as I'm doing it. Take some practice. So just going back over those highlights again. A lot of painting is all about trying to bring that contrast back. You know, you do something to smooth something off, and then the contrast goes away, and then you got to bring that contrast back, and then you try to smooth it down, and it's all about finding that kind of balance in between the two that make it pop, but then also create the type of texture that you're looking for. And here we're going for something that's pretty semi-smoothish, not super blocky. These are some very, very light pinkish tones. Everything looks pretty whitish and grayish, and it's not. Everything has a little bit of color. I just wanted to stop and say thank you guys for watching these videos. It's really, really cool to be able to do this. I am starting to work on some more experimentation type stuff, more teaching things, where it's not just the journaling, because the journaling is fun, but I think a lot of us are also looking to learn from as many people as possible. And I have learned a few things, and there are some things that I want to experiment with as well on the channel. So I'm going to start putting together some very specific, more edited, scripted type stuff that's just fun for us to go through. So expect to see one of those soon. But if you like what you're watching, please subscribe. It's important to me as I build up the channel. It gives me a lot of extra motivation if you hop over to YouTube and subscribe. And if you like the channel on Facebook, those two places are my go-tos to be able to put stuff out there. And the more that we do this, the more I'll be able to experiment with more stuff. the more I'll be able to acquire new equipment and new models, and potentially get into some of the more interesting maker type stuff, because I really want to get into doing some very interesting basing and all kinds of things that help in the World War II diorama scene, all that kind of stuff. So it's really nice just to have those subscribes, those likes, comments, and shares. Very, very important to me. Alright, so now we're going to smooth it off just a little bit. And I did go very, very carefully when working through this. So this is you saw it was pink tone. It's almost water. It is very, very close. And this is just going to kind of tie everything together, which is really, really nice. You can see that it's just kind of sitting on those edges and just making those edges pop on the outside edges of the abdominal muscles, and then right underneath the pec on the right hand side. Okay. Mixing up some blue. Blue is a good glaze if you can do it really, really lightly, because it is the return of blood through the bloodstream. So underneath your skin, if you look under your arm, like where your wrist is, you'll see a lot of blue there. It's very, very faint on the model. Just dry that off. Going back with some warmer tones. See, this time I'm actually being very, very careful for once, and making sure that I'm adding like 1 or 2 layers at a time so that we don't go overboard and mess up the whole thing. Important to do that. So that's probably the lesson out of the last 3, aside from any cool color tones that you've gotten from this, is take your time, let it dry, especially when you're smoothing everything off with the airbrush. Eventually we will do a lot of smoothing with the brush, but right now it is super easy to do that with the airbrush, but it's so easy as well to go overboard and to totally mess up what you were working on before. So take that to heart. It's a great tool, but it can mess things up pretty fast if you're not careful. Okay, more airbrushing. This is still with the pinker tone, the more warm tone. Oh yeah, I actually did something really interesting with this. So I've got the 2 airbrushes. I've got my Harder & Steinbeck 2-in-1 that I've had for a while, and then I've got the cheapo master airbrush that I've been messing with that actually works pretty decent just for like large surface painting. Today I mixed the tones in both airbrushes, and then I have a quick disconnect, and I'm switching in between the 2 of them. So you can see now I've got the cheap one, which has our nice warm tone, and then the other tone is in the more expensive version. And it's actually really, really easy to switch back and forth. Also tells me dramatically that the control that you have over the paint with the more expensive one is light years over what you have with the cheap one. Big note. I'll be doing a video on the comparison between a good one and a cheap one, and the benefits of having a couple of cheap ones around. So I think we're done for the day. So you can see we've got blue in the shadows, we've got some nice pinkish tones coming off. You can see that. You can also see that purple going over towards the edge of the abdominal muscles. Now, a couple of things that I'd like to do as we're finishing up here is I want to brighten that shoulder more, so that that whole arm and shoulder and pec to the left needs to go brighter. The head needs to go brighter, and then the head needs to get a lot more warm with a lot more pink tones, and that's going to finish it up for this one. See you next time.